So it occurred to me that there aren't really many guitar videos out there that are teaching people that are new where to start if your intention is to learn metal guitar. And generally, regardless of the genre you want to play, you kind of all start from the same point, right? And that's simply learning the instrument, learning the techniques. You got to have the building blocks either way. If your intent is to learn metal guitar, then I kind of want to help out with that. So if you see my video, I'll link that somewhere where I basically show my 10-year guitar progress. You would see that from the jump, I went straight into metal music. Like, I love metalcore. I love the heavy metal stuff, like the classics. I love all of it. And really, I just wanted to be able to learn how to play my favorite songs. That was just it. Everything else kind of came later on. So with that, how do you start out? Where do you go to learn? What do you do? So you have tons of options, right? How I personally started, and I swear by Rocksmith 2014, I had that on my, I believe my Xbox 360. And I just grinded on that for a while till my Real Tone cable broke. And then it was good old YouTube University from there. And that's not a bad option either. I mean, there's loads of content out there. It can just be really easy to get lost in, okay, this person has this technique and they're telling you this one thing. This other person will say something potentially very different. So it's kind of good to take certain things you hear with a grain of salt, because what works for somebody might not work for you, and what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. So I mean, there's a little bit of a gray area is what I'm saying. But something like Rocksmith 2014, Musician, great options. I personally have a friend that, you know, he started out a few months ago using Musician, and I mean, he loves it. So definitely worth checking that out. So then another very important piece is, let's also assume that you don't have a guitar yet. You need one of those. And people ask me all the time,
what's the good guitar for metal to start off with?
Whatever. So let me just clear this up for you right now. Honestly, for real, that doesn't matter a whole lot in the beginning. We're trying to see and make sure that you continue down this path, that this is what you want to do. So worry about gear later. You don't need to break the bank. You don't need to buy some $1,000 super crazy. Just get something that works. There's loads of affordable options out there. You can get something used from Guitar Center. Some really cheap brand from Amazon will work. You just need something to jam on, to practice with, to get the techniques down, and then you can splurge your money later. All right. Same thing goes for amps, right? Now, you can kind of get around this if you want to learn acoustic first. I know that's what some people do. I didn't get an acoustic until later, but the techniques are pretty much the same. I mean, you kind of use the same building blocks, and that's not a bad option because you don't need an amp usually. So you can just kind of get an acoustic and just start playing immediately. And, you know, I have a couple behind me, you know, I do it. I dabble. I'm not some like finger picking fiasco though. Not for me. But, you know, the world of amps is a little different now, and I can make a separate video about this, but, you know, amps, dudes are playing out their laptops, their MacBooks, their PCs, you know, you don't really need to have a physical amp. And I can get more into that, you know, just comment down below or whatever, and we can discuss. That's a whole other topic. But let's assume you have a little bit of a budget and you want to get an amp. I mean, you can get a Line 6 Spider or something like that, Boss Katana. There's something that has some built-in effects for you. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. All right, so hypothetically, let's say you have a guitar. Let's say you've learned a little bit, and you know you have an amp. You wanna get a good tone. You wanna dial something in. You know, because you play better when you sound good. That's usually how that goes. So how to dial in a guitar tone really quickly. So pretty much distortion pedal, overdrive. I'm an overdrive guy. You know, no gain. Turn the gain all the way down. You want the gain to come from your amp. This is just to kind of boost it, bring it out some more, tighten things up. Set your gain knob. Personally, you want to use as low gain as you can get away with, because if you use too much, then it just sounds like ass. So usually around 12 o'clock, 1, that's where I like to have it. You know, bit of bass. Scoop the mids. Scoop them, but not too much. Need some. Scoop the mids. Now, honestly, a lot of that is to taste, I will say. I would very much suggest kind of tweaking things to your liking, but that's kind of the rule of thumb. And then just fuck around and find out. So the thing with playing metal, and the thing with guitarists in general, is every guitarist has like a stat tree. You know, like a video game, you know how like you can level up your stats and whatnot? I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? And earlier on, you know, you don't really get skill points to assign. You know, you got to advance, right? And what you will find is in the beginning, where you focus, you will get good at that, you know, over time, right? And with metal, you know, it's the down picking, it's the palm muting, the pinch harmonics. I should probably give an example. I am not warmed up yet at all. Metal guitarists typically have a different stat tree than somebody that plays fusion or jazz. You know, It's different techniques. Now, I would highly recommend that you try to be as diverse as possible. Picking up different techniques, different little licks and whatnot from other genres is a really good way to separate yourself from everybody else, because a lot of metal musicians kind of all do the same thing. So with that, another huge thing is reading tabs, right? Now, I also do heavily advocate for training your ear and figuring things out without tabs. But in the beginning, it's very good to have them, especially if you're learning solos and riffs that are really complicated. So with tabs, you're looking at it from player view, right? And so you have your frets, and that's what the number represents. And then that number will be over top of whichever string that it's playing at the time. Fortunately, a lot of tab softwares these days have playback, so you can kind of play through it, solo segments, isolate, turn stuff off. You can get really crazy with tabs now. Honorable mention, if you've seen my TikToks before, you know I Swear by Songster. Always will. Yes, the premium features are worth it. Ultimate Guitar is another great option as well. But if you ask me, Songster's better. Just saying. So then the question is, what songs do you want to learn? I mean, what are good beginner metal songs? So one of the first guitar riffs that I ever learned how to play was Are You Mine by Arctic Monkeys. So that's not a bad starting point. Not really a metal song, I know, but that's what makes it fun, is the fact that when you're learning songs, especially if that's a part of your regular practice routine, you're like, oh, I can play this now. Like, and especially in the beginning, it's super sick, because you're like, you go from not really knowing how to do anything, and then now you're like, okay, I can play along with this song now. It might be like a 10-second riff, but hey, that's progress, right? Because then you'll see that then you can play an entire song, and then you're playing solo. Doing it that way, to me, helps you stay motivated, right? And I'm not a person where I consider myself a professional educator. I'm just explaining shit how I explain it to myself. But let's say you're a little farther along and you want a little bit of a challenge. I mean, I'd learn some Avenged Sevenfold riffs, or even some early Metallica, you know? Even Pantera has some stuff that's not super crazy. One very vital element of being able to play guitar is down picking. And honestly, that's something I started to do. Just, I didn't practice alternate picking like I should have. Still do that. But playing metal riffs, dude, you want your chugs to be heavy. You want it to do the thing. And that's why I highly recommend learning Metallica. I love that band, at least their older stuff, but there's a lot to learn. And I think one of the biggest tips that I can give you is to be patient with yourself, okay? Because look, if you go watch my other video, I mean, that was 10 years of progress. It takes some time. And I mean, you get out of it what you put into it. So if you put in the time, look, you'll get an output. So obviously, if you're learning as an adult, then obviously you have other responsibilities, you have a life, you have other things to do. I get that. And it's not to say that you have to practice multiple hours a day. I mean, you can sit down and just, do a chromatic exercise for 15 minutes. That's very helpful, because that compounds over time. You do that 15 minutes a day, that's however much time a week. It's about small victories with guitar, right? Because it starts off as, I can play a note, I did a pinch harmonic, I learned how to play a riff, now I can play this one song, right? Now I can play these 5 riffs. It's a progression. It takes time. And above all else, please, for the love of God, use a metronome. Now go practice.